us to Wichita. I got to get this so I read it all right. I'd like to introduce to you Bob Curran. Bob is the present chairman of the Kansas Citizens Advisory Committee on Drug Abuse, past president and board member of the Kansas Association of Drug Abuse Counselors. He's on the board of the Kansas Association of Alcohol and Drug Abuse Program Directors. He's the present director of the Sedgwick County Comprehensive Drug Treatment Program, and he also told me he's a father and a husband. Bob Curran.
All right.
You thought you were nervous, Glenda. I'm real nervous. I think that was, I am. My name's Bob and I pass. I'm obviously not the mayor of our fair city. He had another commitment this evening, so it seems. And I was really, I don't know anything about that. I was really concerned this afternoon when I saw that you were having a meeting over in Stone Park, because I thought maybe I might have to come down and bail a lot of you out. The hassles with they were presently having over in Stone Park. There were a lot over there who didn't have any days, and I really get emotional here tonight. I can't think of any other group that I would like to welcome to Wichita and to the county of Sedgwick. And I have to throw that in because our city and county fight too, and I work for the county, so I want to assure myself of a job Monday morning. So I really am pleased that you all chose Wichita, Kansas to have your annual convention in for NA, and I was trying to think of what I could say. I was around here working in drug abuse treatment when the present functioning NA group was formed, and it had a lot to do with the strength of the members who formed at that time. And I think another person, I thought if there was one person who, for me, and some members of NA might not agree with this, but the Honorable Judge Cliff Ratner at that time would be probably a little more appropriate to welcome NA to Wichita. He did a lot for NA in his way, and I remember when it first started, it did cause a few problems because as director of a treatment program, I was very interested in it and tried to refer people there, but boy, the number of days of sobriety, if you told them all up with the ones that Judge Ratner had there, brought the average way down low. But some people made it that way, and his heart was in the right place, and he's helped a lot of people get straight. And NA in Wichita has come a long ways. I'm particularly glad when I see members of NA who've come through our treatment program, and we continuously try to refer people there. I see the people who come back, who go out who don't need anything. They're done with our treatment program, and we see them back in 2 to 3 months. They didn't need anything after they left us, and no matter how much we tried to push them toward NA, they thought they could do it on themselves, do it by themselves. And I saw a person here tonight with several months of sobriety, and it makes me feel really good to see that a treatment program and NA can work well together. We've had a lot of good cooperation, and my blessings, and I hope a supreme being will bless all of you in the tremendous work that you have to do. Welcome to Wichita.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, it's time, folks, particularly for the people from California. We're going to do the roll call now. I've been reminded by 2 or 3 people that I'm pretty sure from California, they said, it's not in the program. Did you forget the tradition on the roll call? We got our act together tonight, folks. I met our speaker for the first time on the 4th of July of this year in, well, just outside of Newton, Kansas at our second regional campout. And I had the pleasure of meeting Russ over a styrofoam glass with a spoon. And we were on an NA Olympics marathon thing together. And he was the one that poured the water from a pitcher into a cup after carrying it in 5 feet in a spoon. And I was the one that did cartwheels. And we spanned 3 states, but we took first place. And we had 4 states: Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Oklahoma. But here's our speaker for this evening, Russ C. from Norman, Oklahoma.
Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? My name is Russ. I'm an addict and an alcoholic.
Hi, Russ.
And it's a real privilege to be asked to speak here tonight. I guess I get a little closer to this microphone. I talked to my one of my sponsors, and I said, this was about 2 days ago. He called and he said, "Well, how's it going?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting kind of scared. Saturday night speaker at the convention, the World Convention, is kind of heavy, And I said, I was thinking of leaving for Alaska. That's what I was just thinking about. And he said, "Well, just remember this, speak loudly so that everybody can hear you." Okay. They give me a lot of notice. They give me 3 months. They didn't throw it on me. They give me 3 months to think about what I was going to say. And I've talked at a lot of meetings, and I've talked to a lot of different groups and institutions and stuff like that. And I've addressed PTA groups and various kinds of things like that. But to tell you the truth, I really felt more anxiety about speaking here on Saturday night than I have about any other talk that I've had to give anywhere. And I guess the reason is I've been to several conventions, and we've had some very good speakers. Then, so I had a lot of time to think about it. And one of the things I began to think about was what the hell I was going to talk about, If there's anything extraordinary about me, it is that I am extraordinarily ordinary. I do not have an extraordinary story. I did not use a whole lot of dope. I did not do a whole lot of time. I did not suffer a great deal. I did not have any great personal tragedy in my life that I've overcome through the program. I really have a very ordinary story. I'm just an ordinary dope fiend. You can tell. You notice that I got here right at the last moment today. They never doubted you a minute. Well, I seriously did think of leaving town. I hate to admit this, but 16 years of sobriety, and I'm supposed to really, sometimes it's 16 years makes me feel like I'm really supposed to have it together, and I guess I should, but my only cop-out is, what I tell people is that I think my higher power has seen to leave me sick so that I can identify with the newcomer, and because I like working with newcomers, and I like carrying the message, and it helps to not be too well, I think. Maybe not. So anyway, I didn't do anything for a long time. I've made and discarded a lot of speeches, and I have here part of the last attempted drafts at some suggestions because, you know, sometimes I'm fairly good speaker, and then other times I bombed out. I came to meetings and just said all the wrong things and put people to sleep in the back row. Half the audience got up and walked out. I remember my first speaking engagement came fairly early on. Nobody ever asked me to speak when I was using. I never participated in any kind of public functions. I was never asked to speak. The only thing I was asked was something like Cindy. I was asked out of some bars and told not to come back and things like that. But I was never asked to speak at any functions or anything like that. And my first speaking engagement came after I was in the program about a year, and I was in prison, in military prison. And I was selected as the high school graduation speaker. And it's very typical that I was taking a speech class at the time, and they used to take the people that had the speech classes, and they would select them, use them for the speakers, you know, as a sort of a final exercise, and to show how well they had taught us to speak, I guess. And I had a kind of a snobbish speech teacher. He also taught philosophy, and his comment about my talks in the class was that I talked down to my audience. And I was just being myself. And I don't know where his head was at. I guess, being a philosophy teacher and stuff like that, but I was out there in the yard with him, and the level of conversation wasn't that high, But the great fear that I had at my first speech there at the institution was, what would happen was the speaker would get up. I had went to one or two of these. Matter of fact, they graduated people about every month. And almost everybody that got up, the first reaction was, as the speaker, got up, was a certain group of fellows there in the audience, would start out yelling, "Pussy!" And I had a great fear that I was going to get up there and they were going to say pussy. But I wrote out this long speech. I wrote out this long speech, and it was unmanageable, And I got 4 pages into it, and I didn't know how to end it or anything. And so I went to the secretary of the AA group, who was an old-time AA'er there. And he looked at it, and he says, "Well, what we need to do," and they've been telling me this around the program for years, is what we need to do here is simplify this. It's not bad in substance, but it needs to be simplified a little bit. And he proceeded to do that. And so he had my ideas in a simplified form that I could remember. And nobody yelled pussy, and it was okay. And it just goes to show you, what having a sponsor and being willing to admit that you might not be 100% correct can do for you. It got me through that one. I guess I should qualify a little bit. I went on and I wrote this thing up, and I thought of different things to talk about. I thought, this is something kind of special, and I don't want to get up here. What I have done before is get up and get into my drunk-a-log and get 45 minutes, and it's time to quit, And I realize that I haven't got past the first 3 years of my using, And that's kind of a bad place to be in. And so I didn't want to do that. So I organized finally the last 2 or 3 days. I had what seemed like some pretty good ideas, and I wrote them down kind of in an unorganized fashion. And then it's kind of like using, it all looked good like in the height of inspiration, It's like I used to try to write. I want to be a writer, and I used to write things when I was loaded, and then I would get up the next morning and look at them. I say, "What is this shit? I can't even read it." And this talk was kind of like this, I said, it looked good the night before, and I said, "God, I can't do this." And so anyway, I brought some of it along just in case. And then, and then I discarded it, and then I called somebody up this morning to ask them if they were going to the convention, and she said, "Oh, well, you're the speaker there, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Oh, I'm a little nervous." She said, "Well, what are you going to talk about? Is there a topic or something?" And I said, "Topic? You know? There's a topic? You know?" And I said, "Oh, no, there's not a topic. Everybody just tells their story, and you talk about whatever you want to. If you want to, you can bend it a little bit if you want to talk about a topic." And she said, "Oh, okay." And so then I got to thinking. I said, "My God, maybe there was a topic, you know?" And I went back and I looked, and sure enough, there was a topic, suggested topic. This was at 4 o'clock this afternoon as I was leaving home. You know, the topic, the ties that bind us together. And I thought all the way up here, you know, and I couldn't really, I just could not get together to talk about the ties that bind us together in that time. And so finally I turned it over to my higher power, which I've always found is works when nothing else does, you know, and which is usually about the time that I turn everything over to my higher power, just about when I've ran out of all my bullshit, you know. And first of all, I got drunk the first time when I was 3. I smoked my first joint when I was 13. That was in California, and I shot my first heroin in the service in San Antonio, Texas when I was 17. And by the time I was 19, I was in Japan, I was strung out on junk, and I was wore out. I mean, I'm not a heavy-duty dope fiend. I was a lousy hustler, you know. And I don't want to get up here and admit this, you know. I mean, it's true, you know. I was burnt out at 19. I weighed 147 pounds, and I really hadn't used that much stuff, you know. I mean, I was trying to quit more than I was using, and I spent a lot of time tapering off on alcohol. I used alcohol for 3 months. Once when all the connections in town got busted. And at the end of that 3 months, I don't understand, you know, why they don't make alcohol illegal exactly. And some of these other things are called dangerous drugs, because I was always at my most bizarre and I wasn't really dangerous, but I was violent. You know what I mean? I was usually too screwed up to be dangerous. I'm not that bad anyway, and, you know, I tried to knife my brother-in-law one night. And he ran down the street, and I ran down the street swinging this knife at him, but I couldn't hit him, you know. And that's kind of the story of my violence, is I was fortunate. I had murder in my heart, and I had a lot of resentments and stuff, but I was usually too incompetent. One night in Japan, I went out to kill my first sergeant. Anyway, he wasn't my first sergeant. He was some staff sergeant in the section, in charge of his section. And for no particular reason, except I was just been drinking quite a while, and I was just getting kind of crazy, you know. So I took this ice pick, and I went out to kill this guy. And I mean, I really intended on. I had every intention of killing this guy, of picking him. And I know I don't look like the type, you know. I look like one of the hotel clerks, right? I was a hotel clerk for 5 years. This is the same outfit, except for the shirt that I wore as a hotel clerk. I went out to pick this guy, and you know, the Japanese, they have those sliding glass, when they're not glass, they're paper doors. And I knocked on the door, and nobody answered, and so I ran my fist through the door and yelled some obscenities and went off. Oh, no, the Japanese lady, Ojo-san, came to the door and, you know, asked me what I wanted. What you want, G.I.? And, you know, I said, I want so-and-so, you know. And she said, you have the wrong house. And I didn't believe her, but it was true. Fortunately for me, the real occupant of the house was not in. And the next day I was walking down the street with a terrible hangover, you know, shaking and feeling very afraid of everything, and alone and friendless. And I see this Ojo-san with this black master sergeant. He was about 6'6", and he weighed about 260 pounds. Looked like a fullback for the Steelers or something, you know. A guard, tackle or something. And he's saying, is this the guy? Is this the guy? I'm 147 pound, you know. And you know, the only thing that saved me was that when I would get drunk, I would take my glasses off, you know, because I wanted to improve my image. And so she looked at me, you know, and I thought, oh my God, I've had it. And she said, no, it's not him. And I got away. So that was I've talked about my 2 attempted murders. And that's just about the way my dope career was. I was just incompetent, you know. And I went around screwed up most of the time on something and wiped out. And I was a garbage dope fiend. I mean, I had good taste, you know. I would have liked to use nothing but first-class, grade A white, you know, heroin, and you know, good quality weed, and that would be about it. You know, if I would have had if I would have been able to get it together, but I couldn't. You know, I couldn't get it together to be able to do that for any length of time. And so I did a lot of things, like when I was a kid, like sniff gasoline and glue and brass polish and anything. You know, anything. You know, nutmeg. Nutmeg used to be big in the kitchen. Get that nutmeg from the kitchen. Yeah, there's somebody who remembers that nutmeg. I got on that nutmeg when I remember I was about 13 or 14. I was in a boys' home, and I tried some of that nutmeg. I had a connection in the kitchen. Big time dope fiend, you know. Nutmeg connection in the kitchen. And I don't know. I didn't get loaded on it, man. I just got sick. I threw it up, and later on when I was doing my joint time, a guy from L.A. Tried to tell me, hey man, I got some nutmeg. I said, no. Go ahead. Yeah, really. I said, I tried it once. It never got me off. He said, yeah, it really will. If you take enough. Maybe you didn't take enough, you know. I said, well, I don't know. I threw it up, you know. And so I didn't take any more nutmeg. Anyway, I was on the program when I was in joint. I got introduced to the program of Narcotics Anonymous in the joint. And I've been looking around at that time for a way out. I mean, I'd already kind of taken the first step, because I tried to stop using a lot of times, and I found that I couldn't. I mean, I could stop. I stopped using stuff, you know, like, you know, when you're a kid, they tell you, you know, you take one fix, and when I was a kid anyway, they used to have some really ignorant narcotics education programs, and they used to tell us, you know, they used to show them movies, you know, of the weed heads. Hey kid, come here, smoke this, you know. I smoked my first joint with a friend, and then I started looking for those guys, you know, that come around, tempt little innocent children, you know, and I couldn't find any. You know, I found there's a lot of slick talking, mostly Chicanos, you know, that had this, $10, you know. Couldn't get them to get up off of nothing, for nothing. So, anyway, I forgot where I was at exactly. I was talking about weed and how great it was and what kind of dope fiend I was, and well, anyway, there in Japan, what happened was that I kind of got to the point where like I said, I didn't use a whole lot of one thing or another, but I used all the time. I was pretty well wasted from the time I was 15 until I was about 19 there. It was about 3.5 years of constantly being pretty fucked up, you know, walking around out of it, you know. And a lot of those drugs stopped using, you know. When I was in high school, I used speed in the form of nose inhalers to make some pretty good grades one year, you know. Kind of pull it together and do all the semester's homework in 3 nights, you know. And still have time for other things and spacing out and stuff. And there's some knowing laughter there in the audience. I wonder what they're thinking about. Anyway, when I got older, the last time I tried speed after I'd been on the program for a while to pass an exam, I had a slip. I had about 3 or 4 months or 6 months of sobriety, and I had a slip behind, you know, wanting to pass an exam, and it took a little bit of speed just to get me through this exam, you know. And I blew my sobriety over this, you know, and all I did was sit there and just space out. You know, I couldn't concentrate anymore. So although I guess I didn't have a large capacity. A little bit got me pretty screwed up, and I didn't have a large capacity, and so I was, I really was ready to quit when I was 19. I'd had it. I was burnt out, and the burnout it wasn't really physical, although I was pretty run down and stuff, but it was kind of spiritual. I was really sick spiritual. I really had a lot of fear, a lot of resentment, like trying to kill this sergeant, or I would strike out at people when I was loaded because I had a lot of hatred in me and a lot of resentment. And I felt that the world had screwed over me, blah, blah, I had a lot of self-pity. I had a lot of those negative feelings. And I tried to quit and I couldn't, and so when I got to the joint, they said, well, they didn't have any NA, but they had AA. And they said, go to these AA meetings. And so I did. And for the first time, they gave me an explanation that made some sense to me about why when I went down to have one, I always ended up wasted. And it was the first sensible explanation I'd ever heard of that, I'd heard a lot of stuff from relatives, My dad was an alcoholic. There's a lot of alcoholics in my family, quite a few drug addicts in the younger generation. And I'd seen all my life and swore I'd never get involved, but I didn't learn anything from their experience, and I didn't learn anything from the things I'd heard them telling my dad all his life, straighten up, drink like a man, and this, all that crap. Thank you. But I got into the program, and they gave me an explanation that I was an alcoholic. And they didn't say you're an addict, but I said, well, that kind of explains it. And they said, well, here's what you do, and you just keep coming to these meetings. And I did, because I did want a way out. I think one thing I didn't want to do was I was afraid that I would get in that joint, like when I was a kid and I'd been in these places. I got into more trouble in there than I did on the streets, it seemed like, and I was afraid that I might never get out, even though I was only doing 2 years. If I went true to my old pattern in there under observation and became in with the clique, and we started, and started using and getting into all kinds of jams, I thought, well, geez, I'll never get out. I subconsciously. And another thing is that I was already at that age at a point where I did not want one fix, one pill, one drink, or one anything. I knew that when I started getting loaded, if I had to come down in that joint the next day, man, that it would be practically unbearable. I didn't want to come down when I got loaded, and I knew that already. So I went to AA. I went to meetings regularly in there, and I went to step study, and I got introduced to the program, and I dug it, man. And I dug the people that came up, They were really pretty down to earth, and I admired them for coming into that joint. Some of the guys, come in there, make a trip clear from LA to Lompoc, which was about 200 miles, once a month, And I thought, geez, these guys are not really just talking trash, And I found out, too, another thing is that when you go to jail and when you get busted, you lose a lot of people you thought you were friends. Don't know you at all anymore, Most everybody that, when I got busted, I didn't have many friends all of a sudden.
Please turn your tape, do not rewind. Turn your tape and continue on side 2.
As a matter of fact. But anyway, so the fact that these guys would come up to, they didn't even know me and do this really impressed me. And they were honest. And I identified with the alcohol part of it. And I got a lot of help. Well, it was the easiest time I'd ever done, 2 years working the program inside that joint. It was easy time, man. Because I worked, kind of worked the steps. I didn't work them 100%, but I worked them a little, and it really helped. And I got involved. Instead of getting into jams and troubles and stuff, I got in there and got an AA degree, and got to be the high school speaker, and learned a trade, etc. Well, the head of the P&N section, see, I was pretty young, 19, and a lot of people thought, well, he's probably not really an alcoholic. I even question it myself because, you have a stereotype of an alcoholic as some bum on Skid Row, and I did too. And I didn't identify with that exactly. But I asked, I told the head of the PNN section, maybe I'm not an alcoholic. I had doubts, I think some of us have doubts, and especially when we're getting ready to use, we have doubts. And he told me that there were only 2 real alcoholics in the group. One of them was some 50-year-old master sergeant that, they were kicking out of the service just for general drunkenness. And the other one was me, and he'd seen my tests, those tests they give you when you go in. So I figured, well, you must know what he's talking about. And the last thing he said to me was, just remember, this disease is never cured, it's only arrested, And those were that was his parting shot at me. He looked kind of skeptical. They didn't give me any parole either. I thought, 8 months, I became eligible for parole. I'm going to school. I'm getting A's in school. I'm going to these meetings. Why, person of my intellectual capacity, etc., why I'm going to make parole, But I guess they knew me better than I knew me. And he said, no parole for you. And that was okay, because I only had 2. So I got out, and I lasted exactly 3 days on the streets. 3 days. And I started, I say this because, I don't know why, well, for one thing, sometimes if you're doing institutional work, it's kind of discouraging if you're starting out at it, and you see some guy, and he's doing good in the joint, and he's going to meetings, and he really talks great, and you think he's really doing something, and then, and you say, we'll pick you up and take you to this meeting, and, and you find him with his head on his chest 2 days after he gets out, And so I got loaded, and I reverted back to my old self. But seeds had been planted, And I had had a pretty prolonged period, the longest period of sobriety I'd had in a long time, a year and a half. And one of the things, then, there was one NA group that came in there one time. NA was, I guess, about 3 years old then. And the thing about the NAs, this was my group. I thought, this is the group I'm going to look up when I get out. Because these are the same kind of people that I use drugs with. And I always wanted to be a dope fiend. I didn't want to be a drunk or an alcoholic. I had higher aspirations. But I just didn't have the hustle, you know what I mean? So I had to I kept falling back on this drug of 3rd or 4th or 5th choice or something, because it was readily available. But, and so these NA people, I really identified with them. I was going to look them up. And I finally went looking for them one night with some people, and we stopped by somewhere, and we got loaded before we got there, and we never did find the place, and until, what's happened to me on this program is a lot of kind of small miracles. I haven't had any overwhelming spiritual experiences. God has not come down and spoke to me personally or anything like that. But I've got a lot of messages from a lot of small happenings, that have made me wonder. Like, I was in LA, there's 6 million people there. I've gotten out of touch with the program and everything. And I've written AA off because I went to some AA meetings and the people were older and they were alkies and they were older, and even the guy that came to the joint took me to a meeting, and I talked about my drug use and my time. I just gotten out of the joint and this shit. And he says, got me aside after the meeting. He said, if I were you, I wouldn't talk about that. I'd just talk about, you were an alcoholic mainly, and you should mainly talk about that, And this guy he was all right, he was an all right guy, but to me, that seemed kind of hypocritical. Because, it's all over the program. Honesty. How the hell am I going to talk about? It's true that I use enough alcohol to qualify as an alcoholic, but how the hell am I going to just talk about alcohol and, in these meetings and be honest and not be uptight? Well, I mentioned drugs, or doing time, Fortunately, AA isn't like that much anymore, you know. It isn't, and, you know, and that's good. In some groups. But I went to work at this place, and I was out there again, and it just so this guy come back to work there, and I was really kind of getting off into it, and I had gotten a... And it turned out that he was Jimmy Kay's brother. And he introduced me to Jimmy Kay, who was probably one of about 4 people in a population of 8 million that knew where NA was or what it was or anything else, you know. Now what are the odds that I would go to work at this place and meet this guy? And I'm a skeptic. I'm a non-believer. I still haven't been to church in a long time. But, you know, I had to look at that, man. I had to look at that. And I've had to look at a lot of other little things like that as time's gone on, you know. You can't get away from this program. I don't want to, you know, but you can't. I came to Norman, Oklahoma, and there was kind of an NA group in Oklahoma City. I went up there to some meetings, and the secretary was loaded, and so were most of the people in the house. And I don't think any of them are here tonight, so it's safe to say that, you know. And anyway, if they are, they know it's true, you know, down in the basement, you know. Oh, yeah, meeting, yeah. Anyway, I kept going back, but I kind of got inactive, man. I was kind of laying back, and I kind of got in the habit. I got me a secondhand TV set. I've never been much of a TV fan. Instead of going to meetings, I was working days, but I didn't have any excuse, man. You know, instead of starting a meeting, I fell into the habit of watching Gunsmoke reruns, you know, and stuff like that. But people, next thing I know, I get a call, and here's George T. And he's moving to Norman, you know. I said, oh shit, here comes George, man. I ain't got nothing together, you know. I ain't got a meeting or nothing, man. He's gonna say, what have you been doing down here, you asshole? Watching Gunsmoke reruns, you know. I'm not used to working. See, I worked as a hotel clerk for 5 years, you know what I mean? I was a night auditor mostly. And, you know, I did about an hour's work and talked to people and told them where to go in San Francisco and, you know, took care of the money and stuff like that. And I came back here. See, I don't know how I got conned into this by my wife. But I came back here and, you know, I was working with her brother trying to lay carpet. And I'm 43 years old, you know, and I mean, I just haven't been doing any heavy work. I mean, I did, you know, a fair share of it earlier, but, you know, laying that carpet, man, after a year, and bursitis in both shoulders, and my finger was going like this. I had to get out of it. But I used that as kind of an out that I was tired at the end of it, which I was, but I wasn't too tired, you know. What I really was doing was not taking the initiative, because I'd just been through a thing in San Francisco where I'd moved to the suburbs, and I'd been out in Concord, and I'd spent a whole year in Concord trying to get a meeting started, maybe two years, you know, going to a lot of meetings by myself. And I mentioned this, the ties that bind us together, because it seems, you know, like a lot of times, I know that there's a lot of you that probably have some small meetings that you're trying to get started, and you're having a lot of problems, you know, people don't show up, and if they do, they're loaded. Give me a, you know, I mean, I'm not a guy, you know, I kind of wish I could be real optimistic. There's a lot of good things to say about the program. But I'm not, you know, I'm of the old tell it like it is school, kind of, you know, I really don't believe in making things out like they aren't, you know. It's all right to be positive, but, you know, there's negative things going on too. Like, for example, I went away on vacation, and I came back, and we were supposed to have a regional business meeting. I'm not saying this to take anybody's inventory, really, or anything like that, you know. But it was supposed to be a business meeting transpire in the Oklahoma. The second, we had one, and then they were supposed to go to their groups and get the vote and get the results and come back, and, you know, whether we're going to be a region, and then we talked about, you know, answering services and stuff like that. And it was supposed to be a meeting, and, like, nobody showed up, man. And the people that were there from Norman, you know, didn't show up to open up the place, even if the people from Tulsa and this other place had been there. And then, I hadn't been to a meeting. I went on vacation. I was gone a week. I missed two. I left on Saturday morning, got back Monday morning, so I missed 2 Saturday night meetings, and I spent part of my vacation with a dear friend of mine on the program that I've known for a long time. So, I mean, I wasn't completely without program, but I hadn't been to a meeting in a couple of weeks, and it was telling. And I was in a pretty, and I came back, my wife was out of work, and I had this stack of credit card receipts this high, and they shut the water off because I hadn't paid the bill. Reeled together after 16 years. And so I thought, God damn, I need a meeting, man, you know. So I got there, and there wasn't anybody there at the meeting. The meeting place was locked up, you know. And so everything, you know, the ties that bind us together, you know, everything, you know, isn't always all that cool, you know. And I noticed that the people that got this convention together seem to have had some problems to work out, you know. You know, a lot of us talk good, and we have good intentions, but we, when it comes to action and doing what we're supposed to do and taking care of business, we kind of, you know, let down, you know. And I don't know, one thing we never used to let happen was if we had a meeting, we always made sure there was a meeting, you know what I mean? And, you know, I guess, and you know, I guess you could say, well, you ought to, you know, what were you doing? Why weren't you there? Well, I have this belief, see, that I never got a year clean. I came into the program, and I altogether, I spent 7 years trying to get 1 year in. 7 years of slips. And I finally got the year in when I had the responsibility as secretary of this group. And that responsibility of being down there, there were a lot of nights, there were a lot of times when I wanted to go out and use because I just couldn't make it. And but I thought, you know, I got to get that group together. You know, I got to be responsible for that meeting. The responsibility of that meeting kept me clean, got me my first year, you know. And so I have the feeling that there are a lot of people out there that are new or that are slipping, that are having trouble, that if they had the responsibility of, you know, of being a secretary or a GSO or GSR or something, that it might help them stay clean, you know. And another thing is, I've seen people around the program who've had heart attacks and shit from trying to do everything because people weren't responsible, you know. One guy, it's just a dynamo, and, you know, that's great, you know. And, but, you know, I'm a firm believer in spreading the action around, you know. I'm grateful for those people that have really hung in there. I really am, and I'm not one of them. I have a confession to make. I am not one of them. I mean, I've hung in some meetings, a couple years and stuff, but I'm not one of those that really, well, like a certain guy in North Hollywood, like Jim Kay, for example, you know, that I know is Chuck S. here is another guy I know, you know, that I've had the occasion to watch for 10 or 15 years, and I know they've hung in there through thick and thin and went to them joints, and if they didn't have anybody to go with them or not, and went and drugged people out and got them there, and got the pamphlets there. And I've heard a lot of stuff about, for example, the World Service Office. You know, I don't know, I just, it's kind of hypocrisy to me, you know. I shouldn't be negative like this, you know, but what I hear at the meeting is, Jimmy, let's hear it for Jerry Kay, get the meeting, got the pamphlets out, you know. And what I hear out there is, I've been waiting 6 weeks for a goddamn pamphlet, you know, where are the pamphlets, you know? You know, I mean, but I know what's happening, you know. I see, I've been there, you know, in North Hollywood, and I know there's one guy there and a bunch, you know, a few volunteers that come and go and stuff, and people get enthusiastic for a while, and then they lose their enthusiasm. And, you know, I mean, I saw a lot of stuff happen, so, I mean, I try to explain that sometimes, you know. Well, see, this World Service headquarters, you know, that's supplying, now this doesn't look like a very big group here. It's only 350 people from the whole world. You know, I mean, at the one in San Francisco, we had close to 1,000, I remember. But I know that, for example, from our group, that there are a lot of people that aren't here, you know, a whole lot of people. There's a whole lot of groups now. And that's a lot of work, man, getting them pamphlets out. And not only that, but about half the time, when you get down to it, you say, well, how long ago did you mail it? Well, 2 weeks ago, you know. In other words, it says, I said, did you read this? It says, due to heavy demand, we have 6 or 8 weeks. If you plan ahead a little bit, get the money in, because it says 6 or 8 weeks, tells you right here, And then sometimes things just get screwed up, but, it's just like this thing about the meeting, coming to the meeting and the meeting not being, the door being locked, I said. But, it's one thing that I've learned. I have learned a few things. I'm still pretty screwed up, but I have learned a few things in being around the program 16 years. And one of them is that, starting with me, we addicts, a lot of us don't get it together overnight. It takes us a little while. And also, there's a lot of good people become discouraged at the anarchy that prevails in most NA groups and go to AA where it's better organized, and we lose a lot of good people that way. And most of you that have been here any length of time, I'm telling the truth. But I've always, and I can remember sitting in San Francisco, 4 or 5 of us, when we looked around and everybody stopped coming to meetings for a while. We'd had quite a few meetings going and some pretty large groups going, and then all of a sudden, man, I don't know, methadone came out. Methadone came out, and we lost about 2/3 of the groups to methadone programs. Had somewhere else to go, and they were giving them some stuff, and it was legal. But, we sat around, and seriously, some of us said, somebody said, it wasn't me, somebody else said, NA's never going to get off the ground, man. Shit, look at it. It's been here since 1953, and this is 1968, and how many people are there? You know what I mean? Dope addicts are they're screwed up. They're more screwed up than alcoholics. They're sicker than alcoholics. And anyone that gets well enough to function halfway decently looks around at the mess and says, oh man, I can't handle any more of this, and they go to AA, But I always I said, well, wait a minute, because I like NA. See, I like dope fiends, because I'm a dope fiend, I guess. I always wanted to be a dope fiend anyway, and I think dope fiends are cool, and they talk a different language, and I'm kind of out of it now. I've been living in Oklahoma for 3 years, I don't know what they're wearing or how they're talking. I don't even know. I don't even know the handshake. You know the handshake? I don't know. I really don't. I don't know the handshake, man. I can't get it together. And so I don't know if but I always have fun with dope fiends. It's always kind of exciting. It's kind of screwed up, but it's always kind of exciting, and they usually have a sense of humor, and they're usually kind of honest. Nobody told me at an NA meeting, don't talk about being in a joint. They said 2 years. Is that all you did? Maybe you ought to go to AA. So I've never felt, And another thing, I guess, is just people are just so screwed up in NA, really, that I feel at home, man. You know what I mean? I hope this doesn't hurt anybody's feelings or offend you, And I know it's kind of negative, but, that's the way I see it, man. And people are so together. I went to some AA meetings when I first moved to Oklahoma. They have very good AA meetings. And they had addicts there, and they weren't running them out. Although, funny thing is, a group from California, from Burbank, my own hometown, Burbank, California, some AAs came there, and they started telling the dope fiends, don't come here talking about dope. You can't, go start your own meeting. Get out of here. I guess they knew dope fiends or something. It's like San Jose, man. They used to have an AA meeting down on 1st Street. It was a pretty good AA meeting, and all the local drugs came in. They had a lot of recovery programs in San Jose. And all these drunks, were going there. It was a pretty good little meeting. And the dope fiends came in and just took over the goddamn meeting, man. Poor alcoholic couldn't get a word in. They drive their Harleys up in the fucking meeting room, Who the hell? Them dope fiends. They're ruining the meetings. I guess they did ruin it for some AAs. Which, there's a moral there. I think, we have a need for NA meetings. I really feel strongly that there is a need for NA, even though I haven't figured out. And another thing is getting it together to write the book. Bo, I think, maybe the guys finally came along, because it is definitely, I've been in on a couple of attempted book meetings, as a few of you, book writings, meetings, as some of you probably have, and like most NA business functions, there seem to be sort of a semi-exercise in futility, frustration, and, nobody can agree on anything, or nobody could the ones I was at. Maybe you all got it together now. There's a lot more harmony, but we couldn't agree, man. And they finally voted on doing something with the book, which they outvoted me, and so I just said, typical, I said, let them write the book, screw them. Bad attitude, it wasn't working together, and I tell you, another thing that my semi-sponsor from Oregon told me, Gene, when I was talking about giving this talk, he said, well, tell them about the good old days, about the old days in NA, that'll be interesting, Well, if you're starting a new group in a new area, that's the good old days, and you know what that's like, huh? The first NA meetings, man, everybody was loaded. If you had 2 days, you had a lot of clean time, and that, you were able to be the secretary and take off with the funds. There's another together thing, taking off with the funds. You notice that they have somebody that kept the funds, that was mentioned. She didn't run off with the funds, they don't mention that in other groups. You know what I mean? I gotta make another confession. I have a bad habit when I'm the secretary of a group, and there's this ready cash around, because I'm in a chronic state of brokenness, I have a bad habit of just borrowing a couple of dollars, which I will pay back, payday. It's just till payday. It's kind of handy petty cash fund there, the NA Treasury. And I know I'm not alone in this, because I've been a member of a lot of groups. I have made progress. I was the secretary of an NA group way back then, and I actually took the entire treasury one night and went to Tijuana and bought 15 milligram Spanish oils with it, and came back to the meetings, And I haven't, that's the last time I did that. I have always paid back all the money that I've borrowed, I can say that. And I've made some progress, But I know some people that haven't. I know some people, and it's a bad thing about it, People borrow money and they don't. I know some people that borrowed some money, never paid it back, and stopped coming to the meetings, and didn't resign or just disappeared. Where's the secretary? Everybody shows up. Where the hell's the secretary? I don't know. What happened to him? And I found out later on that this person or that person borrowed money from the treasury, and then they got in and they had a job at the time they started borrowing it, but they lost their job. And they didn't have any way of paying it back, and it was time to account for it and explain why the rent wasn't paid and stuff like that. And they couldn't handle it. So, they went and got loaded, or they just stopped going to that meeting, and things like that. So, there's a lot of these things that, we don't, I had this friend in San Francisco who's a lawyer, who used to be a lawyer. Well, I guess he got his bar thing back. And I said, we were riding back from the meetings, and he said, I think we're coming across a bridge, and I didn't have bridge fare. I said, I'll take it out of the treasury. And he said, you can't do that. I said, what do you mean I can't do that? I'm the secretary of this group. I just borrow it, pay it back Saturday. He said, don't you know that is embezzlement? That it's against the law? And I never really looked at it like that. I always looked at it, I was just borrowing a few bucks, which I was going to pay back, which I did, with that one exception. Well, even that one I paid back, eventually. But I had a lot of trouble. One of the things that I want to share, some of the things that I've learned around here. How much time do I have? Is it time? Do you want me to quit? Huh? Okay. Or, see, when I first came in here, I couldn't talk. I used to go to meetings. I was one of those guys that sit over on the side. And see, this is something that's a little bit different, too, than from the old-style dope fiends, you know. We were cool, and we never displayed any emotion. It was uncool to display emotion, you know. And I see, you know, nowadays everybody's hugging everybody and they're crying, and it's beautiful, man. I love it, you know. But you know, the old days, nobody could. It was a no-no. You know, you had to be cool and you had to be tough, and you didn't cry or hug anybody, or you know. And you know what? I mean, some of that's still. I'm still a little bit. You know, I'm not real free. You know, a lot of you I'd like to hug, but I just, you know, I still got a little thing, you know. And but I'm getting better. But I got kind of sidetracked on that emotion thing there. Oh, one of the things when I got busted in Japan was, that I wanted to share with you, was I got busted for drugs, and I was going to clean up, you know. This is it, man. I'm never going to use any more drugs. But it never occurred to me not to use any alcohol. I mean, alcohol was kind of something I could fall back on, you know, a little thing in the background, you know. Drinking's okay, it's socially acceptable, and blah, blah, blah. And in the stockade in Japan, I got hold of this little book by Marty Mann called Primer on Alcoholism, and I read it, and she said this little thing here, well, how can you tell if you're an alcoholic? She said, well, you go out, and you know, I never heard of anything like this before. This is one of the things that people, he said, if you're in doubt, if you don't think you're an alcoholic, go out and take at least one, but not more than 3 drinks for a period of 30 to 90 days. You have to take the one, but you can't take more than 3. And when I saw that, you know, I mean, I already knew, man. I was only 19, but I knew, because I'd already tried it time and time again to go out and take one, and I think maybe once or twice in my life I took 1 drink and fell asleep because I'd worked hard or something, you know. Other than that, I always ended up drunk or back into using drugs. So it occurred to me at that moment that meant that if I was going to stay off drugs, that I was going to have to give up alcohol too. I was not going to be able to use any drugs. And that was just a mind-blowing thought, man, because, you know, like it says in a little bit, what is a drug addict? An addict is a man or woman whose life is centered around the using and getting drugs and finding ways to use, and that was where I was at. I was an addict, and I was an alcoholic addict, and my whole life had been centered around drugs, getting them, using them, and all the ritual that goes with them, you know, fascination with needles and watching the blood and all that crap. And that I thought, what am I going to do? And some of you don't have too much time, and your life may be centered about drugs like that, and you may have this thing, what am I going to do if I stop using drugs?